On May 26, 1990, the peaceful community of Wellington, Florida, was shaken by a chilling crime that would perplex investigators for decades. Marlene Warren, a 40-year-old mother, was at home with her son, Joseph Aarons, and his friends when an unexpected visitor arrived. A person dressed as a clown, complete with an orange wig, red nose, and white gloves, approached the front door carrying a bouquet of flowers and two balloons. One balloon bore the message, "You're the greatest," and the other featured Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Marlene answered the door, and as she admired the unexpected gifts, the clown pulled out a weapon and ruthlessly shot her in the face. The assailant then calmly walked back to a white Chrysler LeBaron and drove away. Marlene was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries 2 days later. The bizarre nature of the crime left the community in shock and investigators scrambling for answers. Initial suspicions fell on Marlene's husband, Michael Warren, who owned a used car lot and was reportedly having an affair with Sheila Keene, an employee who repossessed cars for him. Both Michael and Sheila denied the affair, but witnesses and circumstantial evidence suggested otherwise. Notably, employees from a local costume shop identified Sheila as the woman who had purchased an identical clown costume just days before the slaying. However, since this crime took place in 1990, cameras weren't ubiquitous, and no surveillance evidence existed to absolutely prove this. Additionally, a store clerk from Publix recalled selling balloons and flowers matching those found at the crime scene to a woman resembling Sheila shortly before the shooting. Despite these leads, the case went cold due to a lack of concrete evidence. It wasn't until 2014 that advancements in DNA technology provided a breakthrough. Investigators re-examined a hair fiber found in the suspected getaway car, which had been abandoned shortly after the slaying. The DNA analysis linked the hair to Sheila Keene, leading to her arrest in 2017, 27 years after the crime. Oh, and there's one thing I should mention. Sheila Keene had taken on a new identity, so to speak. Sheila Keene Warren. Sheila had married Michael Warren in 2002, and the couple had relocated to Abingdon, Virginia, where they operated a restaurant together. Facing a first-degree elimination charge and the possibility of a life sentence, Sheila Keene Warren maintained her innocence in spite of the forensic evidence. However, in April 2023, she accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree slaying. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison but was credited for the time she had already served since her 2017 arrest. Due to Florida's weak sentencing guidelines that apply to when the act was committed, this allowed significant credit for good behavior, and Sheila was released from prison in November 2024. This resulted in her serving approximately 18 months following her plea deal, which has caused a great deal of outrage. Throughout Sheila's legal proceedings, Michael has consistently supported her, maintaining her innocence. While there's no absolute confirmation that they're still together, public records indicate that they're not formally divorced, as of 2025. Over the years, Michael Warren has been a person of interest in the investigation, and many still question whether he was involved in the slaying in some way. Also, I think it's important here to take a moment to discuss the distinction between a person of interest and a suspect. A person of interest is someone authorities believe may have information relevant to an investigation, but no evidence directly implicates them in a crime. A suspect is someone the authorities believe to have committed the crime. A person of interest doesn't necessarily need to have been the responsible party in a crime. This term is broader and applies to individuals who might have information helpful to the investigation. They could be witnesses, acquaintances of suspects, or people with connections to the crime scene or victim. Being a person of interest doesn't imply guilt or direct involvement. It simply means investigators believe the individual may assist in clarifying the circumstances of the case. Michael Warren has consistently denied any involvement in Marlene's death and has never been charged in connection with the crime. Some have pointed to Michael's criminal history as potential circumstantial support for his involvement in the elimination. In 1994, Michael Warren was convicted of grand theft, racketeering, and odometer tampering, resulting in a nearly 4-year prison sentence. However, these charges were of course unrelated to his wife's slaying and weren't violent offenses. Michael's never faced any charges whatsoever in relation to his wife's slaying. And you know what they say, if you've never been charged, you couldn't have possibly been in on it. Also, I'll just include a pause here for no reason whatsoever. On February 24th, 1986, Sherry Rasmussen, a 29-year-old nursing director, was found dead in the condominium she shared with her husband, John Rutan, in Los Angeles. She had been beaten and shot 3 times, with a noticeable bite mark on her left forearm. At the time of the slaying, the LAPD quickly categorized the crime as a burglary gone wrong, focusing on the appearance of a ransacked living room and a stolen BMW. Investigators overlooked the possibility of a personal motive, despite evidence like the bite mark on Rasmussen's arm, which suggested a close and physical altercation. Also, keep in mind these initial investigative missteps, because this will be a source of controversy when the case was finally solved. Before their marriage, John Rutan had been in an on-again, off-again relationship with Stephanie Lazarus, who had been a fellow student at UCLA. While John viewed their relationship as casual, Lazarus harbored very deep feelings, which some thought bordered on obsession. When Lazarus finished up college, she ended up joining the LAPD, another factor which will be very important going forward here. After John's engagement to Rasmussen, Lazarus reportedly confronted Rasmussen at her workplace, stating, "If I can't have John, no one else will." Despite this alarming interaction, the initial investigation did not thoroughly explore Lazarus as a suspect. The case remained cold for over 2 decades with little in the way of new leads or evidence. In 2009, advancements in DNA technology prompted the LAPD to reopen the investigation. A re-examination of the evidence, particularly the bite mark on Rasmussen's arm, revealed that the DNA belonged to a female. This pivotal discovery shifted the focus towards Stephanie Lazarus, who had by then risen to the rank of detective within the LAPD. Undercover officers collected a DNA sample from Lazarus by retrieving a discarded cup, which matched the DNA from the crime scene. In 2012, Stephanie Lazarus was convicted of first-degree elimination and sentenced to 27 years to life in prison. She appealed the conviction, but in 2015, the California Court of Appeal upheld the verdict. During a 2023 parole hearing, Lazarus finally confessed to the crime, apparently in an effort to convince the parole board that she was exhibiting contrition for her acts. The mishandling of the initial investigation, particularly the oversight of Lazarus as a suspect, led to legal actions against the LAPD. Rasmussen's parents filed a lawsuit against the department alleging negligence, but the case was dismissed. Additionally, the investigator who identified the key DNA evidence sued the city and the police department, claiming she faced retaliation for her findings. I'm going to guess that you don't really need me to tell you how successful her lawsuit was. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here with a quick reminder to share this video with your friends and family. Also, if you like my content, I've got 2 other channels, one which focuses on mysteries and another which focuses on history, so check them out. Dennis DePues was born in 1943 in Michigan and worked as a property assessor. In 1971, he married Marilyn, a high school guidance counselor in Coldwater, Michigan. The couple had 3 children and appeared to lead a typical family life. However, beneath the surface, their marriage was fraught with tension. Dennis was described as controlling and paranoid, often accusing Marilyn of turning their children against him. This behavior led Marilyn to file for divorce in 1989, seeking to end their tumultuous relationship. On Easter Sunday, 1990, Dennis arrived at the family home for a scheduled visit with his children. When they refused to go with him, an argument began between Dennis and Marilyn. In a fit of rage, Dennis pushed Marilyn down the stairs and brutally beat her in front of their children. He then told the children he would take her to the hospital, but they never arrived. Instead, Dennis shot Marilyn in the back of the head, wrapped her body in a sheet, and disposed of her behind an abandoned church. On the same day, Ray and Marie Thornton were driving along Snow Prairie Road near Coldwater when they noticed a green Chevrolet van driving aggressively. Later, they saw the same van parked beside an old schoolhouse, with a man disposing of a bloody sheet. Suspicious, the Thorntons attempted to gather information and later reported their observations to the Michigan State Police. This crucial tip led authorities to discover Marilyn's body and identify Dennis as the prime suspect. Following the slaying, Dennis became a fugitive, sending a series of bizarre letters to friends and family, attempting to justify his actions. These letters were postmarked from various states, indicating his constant movement to evade capture. The case gained national attention when it was featured on the popular show Unsolved Mysteries in March 1991. This would quickly set off the spark which would solve this case once and for all. Shortly after the airing, a viewer from Dallas, Texas, contacted the police to report a man matching DePues' description living in her area. And by her area, I mean that he was her live-in boyfriend, who she knew by the ridiculous name of Hank Queen. Sorry to all the Hank Queens out in my audience, it's just not exactly a low-profile name to adopt when you go on the lam. But there was one problem. Before the girlfriend learned of the broadcast, she had been informed by Dennis that he had to go take care of his sick mother. This was, of course, an excuse to flee the area as quickly as possible, though I question why he really needed an excuse given what's about to happen next. Her friend, who was watching Unsolved Mysteries, let her know just after he left, and the girlfriend relayed all the information to the authorities. That same night, Louisiana state troopers at the Louisiana-Mississippi state border noticed a van with Dennis's license plate. Dennis led the police on a high-speed chase, breaking through two sets of barriers which were set up to stop him. He engaged in a gunfight with the police while he was driving, and ultimately, when he realized he couldn't escape, he decided to take out the trash himself, if you catch my drift. Holly Lynn Bobo, a 20-year-old nursing student from Darden, Tennessee, was last seen alive on April 13, 2011. On that fateful morning, her brother, Clint Bobo, reported seeing her walking into the woods near their home with a man dressed in camouflage. Clint initially believed the man to be Holly's boyfriend and didn't intervene. His assumption, though understandable given the circumstances, delayed the immediate identification of her disappearance as an abduction. Shortly after Holly vanished, neighbors heard blood-curdling screams. Clint called his mother and reported that something seemed amiss. By the time law enforcement arrived, Holly was gone. The incident triggered one of the largest searches in Tennessee history, with thousands of volunteers combing the dense woods, rivers, and fields surrounding Darden. The community's effort to find Holly became a rallying cry, symbolizing their shared determination and resilience. Despite the scale of the search, tangible leads were scarce in the early months. Law enforcement soon zeroed in on the possibility that Holly had been abducted, but progress was frustratingly slow. Tips flooded in, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation worked tirelessly to piece together what little evidence they had. Holly's case was a priority, but the lack of immediate suspects or physical evidence hindered their efforts. Investigators were also careful to preserve the integrity of their case, fearing that any misstep could derail potential prosecutions. In 2014, a breakthrough came when hunters discovered human remains in Decatur County, approximately 20 miles from Holly's home. The remains, later confirmed to be Holly's through dental records, were a grim conclusion to years of uncertainty. It was determined that Holly had been slain by a gunshot wound to the back of her head. The discovery of her body transformed the case from a missing persons investigation to a slaying case and provided crucial evidence for the prosecution. The investigation took a decisive turn when authorities arrested Zachary Adams in March 2014. Adams, a local with a history of criminal activity, had been a person of interest in the case. Soon after, Jason Autry, a known associate of Adams, was also arrested. Both men were charged with aggravated kidnapping and first-degree felony slaying. Later that year, John Dylan Adams, Zachary's brother, was implicated as well. The arrest provided a long-awaited sense of progress in a case that had gripped the community. The prosecution built its case meticulously, relying on a combination of physical evidence, witness testimonies, and circumstantial evidence. During Zachary Adams' trial in 2017, Jason Autry agreed to testify against him in exchange for leniency. Autry's testimony was a dramatic moment in the trial, offering harrowing details of Holly's final hours. Autry recounted how, on the day of her disappearance, he saw Holly alive at Zachary Adams' residence. According to his testimony, they transported Holly to a riverbank with the intent of disposing of her body. Autry described how Zachary then shot Holly in the back of the head to ensure she was dead. The trial was closely followed by the public, and emotions ran high. The prosecution emphasized the premeditation and brutality of the crime, painting a picture of individuals who acted with deliberate malice. Defense attorneys argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that Autry's testimony was unreliable, given his motivation to secure a reduced sentence. Despite these arguments, the jury found Zachary Adams guilty of first-degree felony slaying and aggravated kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 50 years. John Dylan Adams also faced justice. In 2018, he entered an Alford plea to charges of facilitation of first-degree slaying and aggravated kidnapping. An Alford plea allows a defendant to maintain their innocence while acknowledging that the prosecution has sufficient evidence to convict. John Dylan Adams was sentenced to 35 years in prison, avoiding a trial, but accepting the weight of the charges against him. The Holly Bobo case took another twist in 2024 when Jason Autry recanted his trial testimony. Autry, who had been a key witness in Zachary Adams' conviction, claimed that his previous statements were fabricated. He alleged that he had lied to secure a lighter sentence, and that his role in the case had been misrepresented. This recantation prompted Adams' defense team to file for a new trial, arguing that the conviction was based on false testimony. However, a Tennessee judge denied the petition, ruling that Autry's recantation did not provide sufficient grounds to overturn the conviction. The judge emphasized that the overall weight of the evidence, including forensic findings and other testimonies, supported the original verdict. On December 19, 1987, 17-year-old Barbara Blatnik, a resident of Garfield Heights, Ohio, spent the evening with friends. After attending a local bar to see a band play, the gathering moved to a friend's house. Around 10 p.m., Barbara called her mother to say she'd be home soon. Later that night, friends dropped her off near the corner of Warner Road and Grand Division Avenue in Garfield Heights, close to her boyfriend's house. She never arrived, and this was the last time she was seen alive. The next morning, December 20th, 1987, Barbara's body was discovered in a wooded area off O'Neill Road, near Blossom Music Center in Cuyahoga Falls. She had been subjected to SA and strangled. The Summit County medical examiner confirmed that strangulation was the cause of death. Despite extensive efforts, the investigation stalled due to a lack of leads. The case remained unsolved for over 3 decades. In 2019, the Porchlight Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting with cold cases in Ohio, took an interest in Barbara's case. They funded advanced DNA testing and forensic genealogical analysis. The DNA evidence, including material found under Barbara's fingernails, was analyzed successfully. They used public genealogy databases to identify potential relatives of the suspect. This led investigators to James E. Zastavnik, a 67-year-old Cleveland resident. On May 6, 2020, Zastavnik was arrested and charged with Barbara Blatnik's slaying. Following his arrest, Zastavnik was charged with 1 count of slaying and 1 of aggravated slaying. He pleaded not guilty and was released on bail due to the global situation at the time. His trial was scheduled for October 22, 2021, but his declining health led to multiple postponements. However, before the trial could commence, Zastavnik died of cancer on August 24, 2021, while out on bail and residing with his brother. Zastavnik's death left many questions unanswered, as the trial would have provided a platform for evidence presentation and cross-examination. For the family, his passing without a trial meant they were deprived of the opportunity to confront him and gain a deeper understanding of the events surrounding her death. Her sister, Donna Zanath, expressed frustration, stating that she felt deprived of the opportunity to know why he committed this horrific and heinous act.